So really, I would like to, first of all, kind of pick up from last week in terms of just remembering where we are, what things are, the situation that we're in now with the Muslim Ummah. We mentioned at the last webinar that we don't want to forget our brothers and sisters in Gaza and in Philistine, and wherever Muslims are under tyrannical rule and siege. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give our brothers and sisters in Philistine victory and bless us with the wherewithal, with the means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, is to help and aid and assist in any way we can. And one of the things that we mentioned last month in the previous webinar concerning, what's happening in Philistine, my point was that, subhanAllah, when you see what's happening there, it makes our problem seem very small. I know it does for me. It's very difficult for me to be able to complain in any shape, form, or fashion, in which we shouldn't be complaining only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not complaining about some of the dunya stuff, Most, all of us, I'm sure, certain all of us on this webinar, we have food to eat, we have shelter, and we can, we're not out in the cold. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if the Muslim has, food for the day and he can sleep in safety in the night, that's really all that he or she needs. And we have much, 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 much more than that, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I just wanted to, just remind us of that, and I don't think I needed to remind you at all. I'm sure all of us are painfully aware of that. But I hope we allow, when we see the suffering of our brothers and sisters, wherever they are, kind of reflect upon our, do some self-reflection and say, alhamdulillah, and maybe get our priorities straight, inshallah ta'ala. So listen, before we jump into the webinar tonight entitled Know Thyself, we have some homework. Okay, so I'm an old teacher, so I have to give homework, mashallah. So one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention is a book that I highly recommend for you to read. The book actually is by a 9th century scholar. You may have heard of him. His name is Abu Zayd al-Balkhi. Abu Zayd al-Balkhi. And the work that I'm referring to is called Sustenance of the Soul. We're talking about Know Thyself, Tazkiyah Nafs. So all of this is related. And this is an excellent book. And actually, Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, rahimahullah, is considered really one of the first psychiatrist, actually, or the first to talk about psychiatry, the impact of the matters of the mind and of the soul and the spirit and personal growth and spiritual growth and development. So by all means, and of course, so inshallah, you'll get a chance. This book is available. It's a PDF. So I strongly recommend, if you are involved at all, and I hope we all are involved in personal and in spiritual development, then this is a good book to reference, to check out. Also, of course, any work by Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, of course, fits that bill also. Now, because we're talking about the self, developing ourselves, knowing who we are. Another part of the assignment is to, I don't know how many of you know Imam Tim Piccini, I think is. I've only become aware of him of late, to be honest with you. And he has some talks on secularism. And secularism, specifically the talk that I was trying to find it so I could, relay it to you, or maybe provide a link, but about secularism and how it impacts marriage and the family. And this is really important for us as Muslims, and, because we live, or you do, and excuse me, and I do, and I came from, a secular society. And how does that impact us? Because as we are talking about getting married and establishing, homes and establishing families, what is the impact of the society that we live in upon us. Obviously, it has an impact upon us. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he said that every human being is born. Every human being is born on the fitrah, knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That this is an innateness, but that we become something else based upon, our mothers and our fathers and, whatever they are and the environments that we live in. So we live in a secular environment. So one of the things as we talk about knowing thyself as it relates to our engaging and entering and thinking about, the marriage process is also to think about, well, I live in this society, and to what impact does the secular society that I live in have upon my thinking about marriage, have on my thinking about myself, because first this is about myself, not know thyself, and about my, so I want you to, so if you check out his channel, again, I'm not promoting his channel, but he has a couple of videos and lectures and talks about secularism, but this is something just to think about in general. So tonight we're talking about knowing thyself, our strengths and our weaknesses. And this is very important because listen, let's face it, when you get ready to get married and you get married, you're stepping into somebody else's universe. And you shouldn't step into somebody else's universe without having a good handle upon who you are yourself. And inshallah, that person is going to be stepping into your universe, and that person is going to, inshallah, have a good handle of him or herself, right? So this is what we want to happen. So we want to have some self-awareness. We want to have self-awareness, and we also want to be in a mindset of self-improvement. Okay? So this is really, 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 really very important. So I want you to keep that in mind. Where does that play a part? Because see, oftentimes, excuse me for a minute if I may take a drink of water here, so I won't be coughing too much. Alhamdulillah. So, because oftentimes when we're entering that marriage process and that thinking, it's already about the other person. What do they have? What do they bring to the table? Well, what do you bring to the table? And now I'm not talking about the material things now. I'm talking about characteristics. So now we're talking about characteristics. We're not talking about money and cars, and this is not that discussion this evening. Knowing thyself is what moves you, what motivates you. Okay? So if you're going to step into somebody else's universe, as we said, you should have a good idea about who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses. I want to give you a little anecdote again, and we'll do this a couple of times before we end tonight, just to kind of, give some idea of where we're coming from here. Some of these are kind of funny, but they're true and they're real. Okay, so I want to share with you something that I heard, actually several months ago, and I think the interview was maybe a couple of years ago. I don't know how many of you know Dave Chappelle. He's a comedian. Okay, and I'm going to make a disclaimer at the end, so hold on. Okay, so I don't know how many of you know, again, the comedian Dave Chappelle. And he speaks out, a lot on, on social issues and social justice issues in a very strong way, mashallah. At any rate, I saw him being interviewed by David Letterman. And I think many of us probably know he was a former, talk show host, of many, many years. So during the interview, David Letterman asked him, say, I hear you've become a Muslim, So Dave said, yeah, but I'm not good at it, and the audience laughed, and I chuckled too. He said, but I'm not good at it. Now, what do we call that? I call that self-awareness. Now, we want to be good at it, of course. We want to be good Muslims. We want to learn our deen and practice our deen in the best way that we possibly can, externally as well as internally. It's not just about the outer trappings, but it's also about how we act and how we behave, our character and all of that kind of good stuff. But he said, I'm not good at it. So this is a good self-awareness. Of course, he's sitting there on the stage and smoking a cigarette or whatever he was smoking. I don't know. Now, here's the disclaimer. I'm not recommending to anybody to go listen to Dave Chappelle. I don't know when he became Muslim, not too long ago. Obviously, he has a long way to go. he has a very foul mouth. So I'm not by any means telling you don't, I'm not telling you to go do that. And I'm really saying don't do that. And I should know, having a background in psychology, that when you tell people don't do something, they go rush to go do it, right? So anyway, don't send me any money. No, I'm just kind of kidding. Anyway, but the fact that he was open, he said, no, but I'm really not, I'm not good at it. And that was a self-awareness. So what is it that you're not good at? What is it that I'm not good at? Certain things I'm not good at. All of us are not good at something. All of us have room for growth in some area, in our lives. So anyway, I just thought I would share that little story. It's a little funny, but I think it's good to have some self-awareness, to be honest, to be able to say, I'm not good. I'm not good at this. I'm not where I should be yet. We should always say yet. I'm not where I should be yet. It has a big psychological impact when we use the word yet. But here's where I want to go. All right. So perhaps on the screen you may see a statement by Umar bin al-Khattab, one of the Khalifa Rashidun, after the second in the line after the Prophet Muhammad, after Abu Bakr. And he made a very famous statement in terms of knowing oneself and, recognizing your faults. He said, whoever shows you your faults, he's your friend. Those that pay you lip service in praise, they are your executioners. Wow, that's a powerful statement. What does he mean by they are your executioners? We know what it means, that those who show your faults, they are your praise. And actually, he made another statement, and I don't recall it right offhand, where he actually not only praised the person who, was criticizing him, who pointed out something to him. The person was a little hesitant because this is Omar, he was Amir Mu'mineen. But he said, no, this is a blessing. There's barakah in that when you do this. But what does it say? He says that, but those that pay you lip service, in praise, they are your executioners. People, when they say good things about you that they themselves know is not true, they are doing you a grave disservice. It likely to bring about arrogance in you, because you begin to think, well, yeah, okay, I am that. But when you reality, you may not know you're that. They may know you're not that. You understand what I'm saying? Because sometimes people do that to other people. So it may bring about arrogance and also, big-headedness, as one of my brothers said, or being, cause a person to be egotistical. So Omar, radiyallahu anhu, he recognized that there's some value in recognizing your faults and even having people to point out your faults. And we're going to talk about that, toward the end of the webinar, inshallah, and how that can best be done, or how you can facilitate that to happen, inshallah. All right. So for this to work, for us to really grow, personally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, there has to be a willingness to improve. You got to be willing to. Because if a person isn't really willing to improve, then there's not going to be any real growth. All right. I listened to a sports show, actually. It's an ESPN show that I listen to occasionally. I listen to it a lot, actually, just to keep up with what's going on in the world of sports. And when they end the show is really what I want to talk about. We'll talk about sports. But there are two hosts, right? They're co-hosts. And so one of them says at the very end, he says, I'm sorry, we're out of time. We'll try to do better the next time. I like that. I like to hear him say that every time, because this is something that we should be trying to do. We should be trying to be better the next time. Each day, in the case of us as Muslims, each day we should be trying to do better. But how are we going to do better? How do we know what to improve upon? So this is what we have to uncover. And this is what we're trying, getting at tonight, to get us all to be a little more introspective about who we really are and not thinking, hey, I'm okay. You're not okay. This is kind of the attitude of many people, and particularly people you're engaged in marriage. I'm okay. You're not okay. Well, maybe, maybe not. And all of us could improve in some area or another. Some have worse faults than others. Some have greater strengths than others. But there's always that room. But the key is having an awareness and a willingness to change and a willingness to improve. So, in this regard, I go back to Omar radiallahu anhu. As we all know about Omar, we know that before he was the Khalifa, and he was, one of the companions of the Prophet, and even before he accepted Islam, he was tough. And even afterwards, he was tough. He was known to be very, very tough. And people knew that. But after he became the Khalifa, he recognized, he says, I can't be this way anymore. I have to change. And he became, believe it or not, a softer person. And we sometimes have to make these changes depending upon the circumstances that we're in, the situation. And speaking from an Islamic context, of course, before before Umar, there was Abu Bakr, radiallahu anhu. He was the successor after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we know that Abu Bakr was always known to be a very soft, very kind-hearted, very gentle person. But when he became Khalifa, or when he became the successor after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were times when he had to be very tough. And I think we all know, in particular, the one that stands out is when there was a party that refused to pay the zakat. And he said, no way, you're not going to do that. We're going to wage war on you, because I'm not going to allow you, to get away with doing something that you didn't do during the time of the Prophet. If you did it for him, you're going to have to do it for me, because this is a part of our deen. And so he showed his toughness at a time when he needed to show toughness. That was a change. I'm just trying to show that people can and do change when it's necessary to change for the betterment, either for themselves, or for those around it. So alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. All right. So be willing to improve. Be willing to improve. Why is it that people aren't willing to improve, by the way? I don't know, have you ever thought about that? It's like people who won't go to counseling or go see a therapist when they know they should. Most times it's out of fear. They're just afraid to take that next step. Remember, I don't know how many of you were on the call last week, but we talked about the fishbowl theory, or last month, the fishbowl theory that, fish, you put them in a bowl and they won't grow out any larger than the bowl they're in. And some people are like that. They just comfortable in that bowl, that little bowl, and they don't want to be bigger. And not, bigger in physical stature, but bigger in their humanity, bigger in their consciousness, bigger in terms of their humility. You understand what I mean? So some people are afraid. And some people are afraid for different reasons too. Some people are afraid because of what other people might think. You start making a change, improving your life, particularly sometimes from a spiritual context. And, sometimes you're afraid that, well, what are my friends going to think? And sometimes, unfortunately, that happens. We find people who are making changes in their lives. And unfortunately, it happens with the closest people around there. Oh, you think you're better than somebody else. You think you're better than everybody else. Oh, the person is making a change really for the pleasure of Allah and for the improvement of himself, for the betterment of himself. And so the person can be a better person. We're going to be better the next time. We want to be better tomorrow than we are today, inshallah. Right? So sometimes people, and I'm just saying that so that, for all of us, me included, because sometimes there's this fear, to really take that next step, because when you take that next step, you're not going to be exactly the same person anymore. You're going to be a little bit different. And that's going to be, recognizable, And so it's like, it's like someone said, I heard someone said recently, they say, people who say that money won't change you. A lot of money won't change you. I only say that because they haven't had a lot of money. If you have a lot of money, that will definitely change you, or change some things in your life and in the way that you live your life more than likely for many people. But anyway, I think you get the point here. So let's remove this fear. Let's be open to change. Let's be willing to improve upon our lives, and upon the things that we do and the way that we behave, the way we act. And now we're gonna get to this in terms of what are these things, because most of us are walking around like now, most people, that we don't know what our strengths are, and many of us don't even know what our shortcomings are. But we think we're okay. We think this, we think, and there may be people around us patting us on the back and say, "Man, you're the best. Go, girl." But this, it may not be the way. It may be, you may be okay, but we never should think of ourselves as really okay, to be honest with you. We should be always thinking of ourselves as a work in progress, that we need to try to be better and to get better all the time. But we could talk a lot about these kind of things, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. But I just wanted to say to you that, hey, don't be afraid to make changes in your life. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to improve. All right. Now there's another slide that you may be seeing. This is, and I hear this all the time. This is the way I am. This is just the way that I am. Maybe it is. But here's what I want to ask you. Is this the way you want to be? This is the way I am. But in reality, is this the way you want to be? Now, it's back to what we were just talking about, because maybe you don't really want to be that way, but maybe you're afraid, or you don't know how. You don't have the tools yet or the skills to be different or to be better. Not to be just to be different, but to be better. Because it does take skill. There does take some tools that we'll share a few things with you. But obviously we can't go into full depth about that. And you need to, get with someone one-on-one and, if necessary, to help you to kind of sort those things out for you, if necessary. But don't be afraid to find out. Do I need some help? Are there some things that I'm failing in? And we'll talk about that more in a moment, all right? Or here's the other question. So the first question is, so if you're thinking, this is the way I am, is this the way that you want to be? Or the other question is this the way you should be? Should I be this way? So, one of the things that we need to do, speaking to myself first and foremost, we need to listen to ourselves and hear ourselves talk. Because a lot of times we're just talking. People are just talking, and they're not really reflecting upon actually what they are saying. Because if you say, this is just the way that I am, number one, as a Muslim, this is a dangerous statement. I'm going to tell you why. Because why we're denying, we could be denying. We could be denying the ability for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring about real change in your life and opening up a way for him to come into your life. You understand? And so talk to anybody, particularly those who have converted to Islam or reverted to Islam, who really make some real serious changes. This was by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They wanted that change. They didn't want what they had anymore. Not whether their life was full of, how can you put it, trouble or whatever, because not everybody who reverts to Islam comes that way. No, but some people want a better life spiritually. Some people want a better life spiritually. So they said, no, I don't want to be that way. I don't want thinking like that. I don't want thinking the way that I don't want to think individualistic like I was thinking before. I don't want to, thinking, selfishly like because Islam erases all of that when we embrace it wholeheartedly. So we shouldn't be afraid, to do that. All right, let's get on to the final stage here. So let's look at some skills for successful marriages. All right, so this is where we'll conclude. We don't want to take up too much of your time and allow some time for any feedback or any questions that you may have. All right. So you may see it there on the screen, inshallah. So now, this isn't an exhaustive exhaustive list in any shape, form, or fashion. No way. These are just only a few things that, you know, I think that many people struggle and need. Okay. There may be other things, and we can talk about that, of course, at another time. But number one, develop patience. You're talking about getting married. You want to be being married. Those of us that have been married for a while, you need patience. To make it work, you need a lot of patience. Patience with yourself, patience with your spouse, patience with the children that come, patience with your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, this one. You need a lot of patience. So you have to develop patience. And of course, we could have whole workshops on the idea of patience. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran talks about patience. But we have to develop that patience if we're going to be successful in our marriages. What is the second thing here? Learn to listen. Learn to listen. Listening is an art, by the way. There's an art to listening. Actually, one of our predecessors wrote a very nice treatise on the art of listening. And I've given in the past in some talks about this art of listening. And there is an art of listening. We can't get into all of those specifics now, but you got to be able to listen. So there are two aspects. There are two aspects to listening. All right. Number one, or at least two aspects to listening. Number one, in terms of being engaged in a relationship, being willing to listen to what the other person has to say. Sometimes we just want to say what we want to say. We just want, we want the other person to hear us so much, that we don't, stop it, and to say, well, let me hear what you have to say, and sometimes here's a bit of a cure, a little trick you can use, try to do this. If you're a person that talks a lot, like me, I talk a lot in social engagements. So I have to remind myself and say to myself, make this little trick in my brain to say, I really want to hear from you. I've said more than enough about myself or about my thoughts and my opinions or whatever it is that we're talking about. I really want to hear from you. And then be quiet and allow the other person to share, because everybody wants to share. Most people, in most cases, most people want to share. And so, so you allow the other person. So, let's not be so quick, that we want to get our point across, or that we want to share our story, or we want to share, let also allow the other person to be able to give you feedback or to talk about their day or whatever it is that they want to talk about, because sometimes, if you're, the husband may rush home and, everybody, and, if the wife is at home, if she's, if she's the manager of the house, I don't want to, and she's managing that, that's a huge job, and she has children, then believe me, when the husband comes home, she wants to talk to another adult, all right? Because all she's been hearing is, baba, mama, and, or whatever the level the children are on at that particular point in time, So when the husband comes up to an adult, hey, I want to talk to an adult. So if you're the male, you're the husband, let her talk, let her share, so you got to listen. Okay, how was your day? So you can come in saying, now I know you want to unload on your day, maybe, or maybe you don't want to say anything at all, that you want to go and sit and, do what you want, do what you normally do. Hopefully it's not go to a video game. But, but first, sweetheart, how was your day? Somebody has to be the first to say, honey, how was your day? No, you first, sweetheart. No, you first, that would be wonderful if we could do that, right? And we could hear them. Now, there's another part to listening that I want to address tonight. And I'll give you an example of how this added to my own personal growth in my marriage. All right. And I'll give an example. Listen if people have a criticism or they are offering Yeah, they're offering, if they're criticizing or they're offering something that may not sound too good. Now, our first reaction is to be defensive, right? But my suggestion is that listen to what others say, jazakallah khair, and think about what they said. Because maybe they are right. So let me give you an example. This is a true story, by the way. I don't know if any of my family's on this line or called out, but anyway, if it's the children, they're well too young to remember. If my wife is listening, she might remember. But this was years ago, 15, 20 years ago, at least. At least. I remember where we were exactly. I remember the house we were living in. I mean, because, you know, this was a moment. So my wife and I we were upstairs, getting ready to descend downstairs, and we were having, I guess, what I would call a spirited discussion. Not an argument, a spirited discussion. It was not an argument. So we were at the top of the stairs. So she turned to me, she says, you know, when you talk to me in this way, you're often quite sarcastic. Oh, okay. So first I had to say, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't know I was that way. And you know, I thought about it. I thought about it a lot. What she said, and I thought about what she said, but what she said, what I was saying, and how I was saying it, because that's what sarcasm is, right? It's how you're saying it. And I thought about it, and I said, well, doggone, she was right. I've been sarcastic. So I had to make a change that I couldn't be that way. But you see, sometimes we get into these modes and we don't know we're in that mode. We get into these sarcastic modes, we get into these silly modes, or whatever that mode may be, that may be unbecoming or may be really hurtful to somebody else. You know, and we may not be aware of what that is until somebody shares that with us. Now, we can do one or two things with the information. We can dismiss it and say, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm okay. Remember, you're not okay. Then we got to try to put it back on the other person. Or we can listen and say, take it to heart first. I would, my suggestion, take it to heart first and say, first of all, you know, because it's your Muslim sister. Your wife is your Muslim sister. All right. She's your sister in Islam. So say, Jazakallah khair. Thank you for sharing that with me. I need to give that some thought. You may be right. And literally, seriously, think about it. And then, if she's right, make a change. Make that change. And you'd be surprised. Now, the other lesson, because I gave some descriptive detail about being at the top of the stairs, so this is just some advice. Don't have spirited conversation, or at least don't have arguments at the top of the stairs with your spouse. All right. We don't want an accident to happen. I know that's not going to happen. None of you would, you know, accident, you know, on purpose to make an accident happen. Oh, to be left. All right. But you're getting my point, right? So listen. All right. So let's see. What is the next one? I think I got them out of order on my sheet here, but that's okay. I think it's learn how to, well, I'm going to go in my order because I might get dyslexic here. Anyway, be quick to say, I'm sorry, or please forgive me. Be quick to do that. Those few, you know, some people have a really hard time saying, I'm sorry. Just those two words, I'm sorry, or forgive me. Make three words, please forgive me. I'm really sorry. And this is, it's not, you know, it's not that hard. Well, it's hard if you're unwilling to humble yourself. And now that's a whole nother discussion about how to humble yourself. Believe me. And there are techniques of how to humble yourself. We don't have time to talk about that tonight, but there are things to do. Don't be. I'll just tell you this one real quick because I'm your brother in Islam and you are my brothers and sisters in Islam. One of the most effective ways, if not the most effective way to humble yourself, is to pray tahajjud. Absolutely pray tahajjud. Get up in the middle of the night. Do not let anybody know that that's what you're doing. And get it, if possible, and pray tahajjud. Do it on as much as you can and beg Allah for his help, for his mercy, and for his forgiveness. And ask him to humble you. Oh Allah, please humble me. And understand that you're only a speck. You know, I gave the example one time. I was giving a talk and I said, you know, if you've ever been up in an airplane at 30,000 square feet, and if you look down, you can't see yourself. You don't see anything that looks like you. So, hey, okay, don't get full of yourself. But you have to humble yourself. You have to be able to humble yourself to say, I'm sorry. So this is a good thing to do. All right. Learn how to hold your tongue. Oh boy. Oh boy. Learn how to hold your tongue. You don't always have to respond at the moment. You don't always have to, not at that moment. And sometimes you may decide it's not better to respond at all. And if somebody is, maybe pushing the issue, you simply say, I'm thinking about what you said. Can you give me some time to reflect upon it? And I'll get back with you, inshallah. You don't have to respond. If you know that responding may escalate things to where it should not be. So learn how to hold your tongue. Just say, no, I don't think I need to, I don't think I need to talk about this. I don't think I need to comment on this, So when you can learn how to do that, this takes a lot of discipline, it takes a lot of practice. None of these things are really easy to do. Okay, and also be your own critic. The last thing, be your own critic. One of the things that we're often asked to do, now we're not one of the things, we're asked to do this a lot in the Quran, is to reflect, to reflect. One of my teachers told me, he told me this a long time ago. He said, Brother Muhammad, he says, Allah sometimes tells us to reflect more than he tells us to pray. In the Quran, he said, in the Quran, there are more ayat that tells us to reflect on his creation, reflect upon Allah's creation, reflect upon ourselves. And these are all ayat in the Quran, more than tell us to pray. This is profound. And so sometimes it may mean that we need to kind of remove ourselves or take breaks and to really, get in a situation where we're able to really have some real spiritual devotion, if you will, and to really some introspection and introspective time. All right. Now, so here's where I want to conclude here. So we talked about these things here. So as we said before, maybe you know or maybe you don't know, excuse my coughing, maybe you know or maybe you don't know some of these things about yourself. How would you know? How could you know? One of the ways you can find out, one of the things we talked about is that, maybe doing some seclusion, and really doing some, introspection and reflection upon yourself and what you say and what you don't say and how you say. That takes a lot. And you can do it though. People do that. Or you can ask trusted people now to give you feedback. Say, you can ask someone that you know and that you trust, that won't be judgmental, and say, do you think I'm a patient person? Do you think I need to develop more patience? I'm trying to improve myself. I'm involved in a program of self-improvement. And I really would like your honest feedback. Now, you want to ask somebody that who's not going to, be hurtful, someone who's tactful, and somebody who, really understands how to communicate in a good way, because, sometimes people can be damaging with their words. But this is one of the ways to find out. And if you want to do that, then you have to really ask in such a way as well, so that you kind of get the feedback that you're looking for in the way that you're looking for. Not that you want to hear, oh, no, you're just fine. No, you really want honest feedback. So you could do that. That takes a lot. Many people not quite willing sometimes to do that. Or maybe there are some psychological batteries that you can go through that helps to, in a way, determine these kinds of things, about yourself. But I think a more effective way, if you have someone that's really close to you and that you're really trying to, you believe that person will give you the honest feedback in a way that will be beneficial and helpful to you, I really implore you to do that. So, mashallah, brothers and sisters, we spent a little bit of time here and we're just touching on things. All we're doing now is just touching on, giving us things to think about. Yeah, you're talking about getting married. You want to get married. I think this is a wonderful thing. Alhamdulillah. As we said in the last webinar, the most important decision you'll make in your life, more important than buying your house, more important than buying a car, more important in terms of your career. Believe me, it'll be more important than all of that. More important than all of it. And when we know how Islam, where Islam stands on this issue of marriage and family, you'll see it is hugely important. Hugely important. So, unfortunately, we probably spend more time, planning our careers and our portfolios than we do with planning our marriages. I hate to say that. But based upon, unfortunately, our divorce rates, and I'm talking about in general now, let me speak to the Muslims, because unfortunately we're beginning to kind of fall in the way of the non-Muslims in terms of the divorce rate. But that's because I think we're not taking the right steps. And this is, alhamdulillah, I really am happy to be associated and affiliated with Beyond Chai, because Beyond Chai is here to help, help you that are planning and thinking and wanting to get married, to kind of take the right steps so that, things can be as firm as possible. There are no guarantees, of course. There are absolutely no guarantees, and there's nothing perfect either. This is the other thing, So what is the expression? There's some expression about perfection. I don't remember it right now, but you know what it is. So sometimes we're looking for perfection, and it prevents us from taking any steps forward, because we're waiting for everything to be perfect. Or as I like to say, you'll never get downtown if you're waiting for all the lights to turn green. They're not going to all turn green at the same time. That's not likely to happen. You'd love to, because man, you need to get where you're going. But generally, you're going to at least have to slow down sometimes. And occasionally you just have to stop. And that's life. And this is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right. So we just wanted to share these things. These are just some things for us to give some thought about, so that we can reflect upon them, inshallah. We all can reflect upon them. In particular for those of you who are thinking of getting married. It's a wonderful thing. Certainly can. It is a wonderful institution that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained. So, but it does require, some work. It does require some research. It does require some introspection. It requires that sincerity that we talked about last time. It requires all of that. But that's just something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability to do. And if we're willing to get on board with that, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Inshallah, Allah will bless us, to have solid and sound relationships. So I want to conclude simply by saying, we started out by saying about the title of this webinar is Know Thyself. It's about self-improvement and self-awareness. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all self-aware. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us those who are willing to make improvements to ourselves. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us better on the inside than we are on the outside. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us better tomorrow than we are today. Allahumma ameen. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.